Hi, this video is going to help explain the system that's used for citing Bible passages. Basically, the Bible is divided into books. Those books are divided into chapters, and the chapters are divided into verses. This system helps you locate a passage in the Bible pretty quickly, no matter what version of the Bible you're using. So like we talked about in class, page numbers are different from version of Bible to version of Bible. So you can't say, look on page 50, because page 50 would not be the same thing in every single version of the Bible. So the system of books, chapters, and verses helps to make that a little easier no matter what version of the Bible you're using. If you're just looking up one verse, a citation is first going to list a word, and that word is the book. Then it'll have a number for the chapter in that book, then a colon, and then another number for the verse. So, if I was writing Genesis, chapter 1, colon, verse 1, that would tell me to look in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1. If there's more than one verse, you'll see that those numbers at the end will be separated by a hyphen. So, Genesis is the book. Then the chapter would be 1. Colon says start at chapter 1, verse 1, but I'm going to go to verse 5. So that tells me Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and then the hyphen means continue to verse 5. But what if you need to read more than one chapter in a book? In that case, you're going to see the name of the book, then the numbers for the chapters will be separated by a hyphen. So, we'll go back to Genesis. So, Genesis is my book, and I'm going to read the first two chapters. So, chapter 1, hyphen means to or through chapter 2. So that citation means I'm going to read the first two chapters of Genesis in their entirety. But what if I only need to read certain verses in that chapter? So I don't need to read the entire chapter. So book, Genesis, chapter 1, and then remember we say we separate the verse by doing colon, chapter 1, verse 1, to chapter 2, verse 5. So that tells me where to start and where to end. But now what if the books aren't in a row? If I have to read two different chapters, let's say I need to read Genesis chapter 2 and Genesis chapter 6. Well, if I have a hyphen, that would mean read Genesis 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But I don't need to read all those chapters. I just need to read 2. So I'm going to write my book name, Genesis. I'm going to write the 2 for chapter 2, and then I'm going to separate those chapters by a comma. So this tells me to only read Genesis chapters 2 and 6. The hyphen would mean read Genesis 2, read Genesis 6, but also read everything in between. So comma means just those two. If the verses aren't in a row, you're also going to use a comma, same thing. So let's say I'm reading in Genesis, that's my book, and I'm going to read chapter 1, but I only need to read verses 10 and 20. So 10, comma, 20. That tells me read chapter 1, verse 10, and chapter 10, verse 20. If those are in different chapters, the citation's going to look like this. So Genesis, the book, chapter 1, colon, verse 1, to verse 5. But then I also need to read chapter 3, verse 2 through 8. Okay, so same book, but two separate passages. Okay, but what if there's a number in front of the book? That means that there are two books in the Bible that have the same name, so you need some way to distinguish between them. A good example of this would be 1 Kings and 2 Kings. So it means there are two books in the Bible that are called Kings, and so you need a way for people to know which book they need to look at. So the number in front of the book means go to 1 Kings, or the number 2 means go to 2 Kings. If there's a letter in the citation, it means that that verse can be split into multiple parts. So either the verse is 2 sentences long or 2 phrases long, and the halves of that verse make sense with different passages. So the first half of that verse makes more sense with the verses that come before, and the second half of the verse makes more sense, really belongs with the verses that come after. So if you see that, it's going to be book. So we'll go back to Genesis here. Chapter 2, so I write a 2, and then I say verse 1, so colon 1. A means read the first part of that verse. Most of the time when this happens, you'll be able to tell just from the context, just from reading those verses, which part of the verse belongs with the story before that verse and which part belongs after. Now, your textbook talks about there being italicized F's sometimes in Bible citations. Doesn't happen very often, but if it does, it just means read what comes after. So Genesis 1, colon 1 means Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and then F means read the next verse. Most of the time, you'll see that written Genesis 1, colon 1, hyphen 2. But I guess sometimes you would see an F. I haven't seen them very much. If you see 2 italicized F's, so Genesis 1, colon 1 means chapter 1, colon 1 means verse 1, and then you see 2 F's, it means read most of several verses that follow. So let's summarize here. Book is a book. Chapter means a chapter. Colon means separates chapter and verse. A hyphen means to or through. So Genesis 1 hyphen 2 means read chapter 1 through chapter 2. A comma, that's a nice looking comma, means and. So that will help you figure out all of the different Bible passages that we will be using this semester.